Today marks 78 days since Nancy Guthrie vanished. 78 mornings her loved ones woke up hoping for news. 78 nights ending without closure. 78 days of headlines, theories, searches, interviews, and one question that still hangs over everything. What really happened to Nancy Guthrie? For many cases, time slowly pulls public attention away. New stories arrive, interest fades, people move on, but this case has done the opposite. The longer it continues without a clear resolution, the stronger the public interest becomes. Not because people enjoy mystery, not because viewers want drama, because something about this case does not sit right. Even people who only followed it casually keep coming back and asking the same questions. Why does it feel like such an important piece is still missing? Why are there so many details, yet so little certainty? And why, after 78 days, does it still feel like investigators may be circling around something they cannot yet prove? Welcome back to Dark Crimes Unsolved. Today we are not here to repeat old headlines. We are not here to recycle rumors or chase noise. We are here to look at what often matters most in long investigations: the silence. Because silence can mean many things. Sometimes silence means there are no answers. Sometimes silence means investigators are stuck. But sometimes silence means the opposite. Sometimes it means progress is happening behind closed doors. Sometimes it means names are being examined, records are being pulled, devices are being analyzed, timelines are being rebuilt, and authorities are staying quiet for one reason only. They do not want to move too soon. That possibility matters here, because when a case reaches this stage, public silence can be misleading. What appears inactive from the outside may be highly active behind the scenes. And yet, the frustration from the public is understandable. People want to know whether the evidence is strong. People want to know whether someone is under watch. People want to know whether law enforcement believes this was random, personal, staged, or planned. Most of all, people want to know whether Nancy can still receive justice. That frustration has fueled thousands of conversations. Viewers, neighbors, commentators, and concerned followers keep returning to a short list of unresolved issues. Not 20 issues. Not 50, 3 major ones, and each of them may connect to the others. The first is the timeline, specifically the now widely discussed 41-minute gap. When cases remain unsolved, timelines become everything. They reveal opportunities, they expose contradictions, they narrow possibilities. A single unexplained window can become the center of the entire investigation. And in this case, many believe that 41-minute period may hold the clearest picture of what happened. Who was moving? Who was not? What was detected? What suddenly stopped? And who had enough confidence to act during that exact window? The second issue is the home itself. Whenever someone disappears under suspicious circumstances, the earliest moments at the location matter more than most people realize. Doors, handles, drawers, bedding, flooring, personal items, clothing, devices. The smallest touch can erase the smallest trace. That is why so many followers of this case continue asking whether the scene was protected quickly enough, thoroughly enough, and seriously enough from the very beginning. Because if crucial minutes were lost, evidence may have been lost with them. The third issue is the one many people overlook. It is not emotional. It is not dramatic. It does not make loud headlines. But in modern investigations, it can be more powerful than eyewitnesses. Digital evidence. Not what someone remembers. Not what someone says. What a system recorded. What a device logged. What a signal marked. What a timeline preserved without opinion. And that may be where this case eventually turns. Because today, crimes are often solved not by confessions, but by invisible trails people never knew they left behind. Phone movements, location pings, vehicle data, home systems, financial transfers, medical logs, search histories, deleted communications, small details that seem meaningless alone but devastating when connected together. That is why many people believe the public knows only a fraction of what investigators may already have. Think about it this way. If authorities had nothing, public pressure would likely be even louder. If authorities had everything, arrests may already have happened. But if authorities had something important, something promising, but not yet complete, this exact kind of silence can happen. Measured silence, controlled silence, strategic silence. And that possibility explains why so many people continue watching closely. Because the case does not feel closed. It feels unfinished. It feels like a door is almost open, but not yet. Now here is where things become even more serious. Long before any arrest in complicated cases, investigators often build what is called a complete narrative. Not just suspicion, not just one clue, a narrative. Who had motive? Who had access? Who had opportunity? Who benefited? Who lied? Who moved differently after the event? Who cannot explain the timeline? Who appears calm publicly but chaotic privately? Who thought they covered every track? That process takes time, sometimes far more time than the public expects. And when digital evidence is involved, it can take longer still. Records must be subpoenaed. Devices must be examined. Accounts must be traced. Metadata must be verified. Locations must be compared. False leads must be eliminated. What looks simple from the outside can take weeks or months inside a real investigation. Which brings us back to day 78. For families, milestone days are painful. For investigators, milestone days can be pressure points. For the public, milestone days become moments of reflection. What do we actually know? What only sounds convincing? What remains unanswered? And what clue has everyone underestimated? Many viewers believe the answer may not be found in dramatic statements or public appearances. They believe it may be hidden inside a quiet technical detail, a record, a signal, a timestamp, something emotion cannot distort, something memory cannot change, something that does not care who is telling the story. And if that is true, then the breakthrough in this case may arrive not with a dramatic confession, but with data. Cold, exact, undeniable data. But before we get there, we need to understand why the 41-minute gap continues to dominate discussion. Because if one device stops speaking at the wrong moment, then someone may already know why. If one lesson has repeated itself across modern criminal investigations, it is this. People can hide emotions. People can rehearse stories. People can deny, deflect, delay, and distract. But digital systems often do none of those things. They simply record. That is why so many experienced investigators now begin with devices before they begin with statements. Devices do not get nervous in interviews. Devices do not forget times. Devices do not try to sound convincing. They log movement. They mark interruptions. They preserve patterns. And in the Nancy Guthrie case, many followers believe one of the most important witnesses may not be a person at all. It may be technology. That is why the conversation keeps returning to what some viewers call Nancy's digital heartbeat. Not heartbeat in the emotional sense. Not heartbeat in the symbolic sense. A digital trail of life activity. Routine signals. Logged timings. Expected patterns. Silent moments that stand out precisely because silence was not normal. When people hear the phrase medical device, they often imagine only treatment. But in many cases, devices also create timestamps, usage records, status logs, alerts, or communications depending on the model and setup. That does not mean every device tracks location. It does not mean every device sends constant updates. It does not mean every device reveals dramatic secrets. But it does mean one thing. If a device behaves differently during a critical window, investigators notice. And that brings us to the 41-minute period that has become one of the most discussed elements in this case. Why does that window matter so much? Because timelines are where truth and fiction begin to separate. A person can tell a story that sounds complete, but once timestamps are layered over it, cracks begin to show. Phone activity, door openings, vehicle movement, camera interruptions, internet disconnections, device signals, location pings. Suddenly, the story either matches reality or it does not. That is why so many viewers believe The 41-minute window may be less about mystery and more about sequencing. What happened first? What stopped next? Who moved after that? What was normal before that window and abnormal after it? Those are the questions investigators often ask again and again. Now, let's think carefully. Most people live inside routines they barely notice. Wake times, lights, charging phones, motion through rooms, sleep cycles, door habits, medication times, calls, messages, television use. Routine creates a baseline, and when something serious happens, the baseline breaks. That break can be louder than any witness statement. Imagine a system that normally shows activity at certain times. Then suddenly, during one crucial period, activity changes. Maybe movement stops. Maybe communication ends. Maybe a device disconnects. Maybe a pattern never resumes. To the average person, that may sound technical. To investigators, it can be a giant arrow. This is why some people believe the key evidence in this case may not be what someone said afterward, but what systems quietly recorded during those minutes. Now, another theory has circulated heavily among viewers: signal interference. Let's be clear and responsible here. There is no public confirmation of a jammer or specialized interference device in this case. But the theory exists because people are trying to explain abrupt digital silence. If multiple systems fail at the same time, people naturally ask whether coincidence is enough to explain it. Was it random failure? Was it timing? Was it human action? Was it environmental? Was it deliberate? These are legitimate investigative questions even when the public lacks final answers. And if deliberate disruption ever became part of the picture, that would suggest something important: planning. Because crimes of impulse and crimes of preparation often look very different. Impulse is messy. Preparation is controlled. Impulse reacts. Preparation anticipates. Impulse hopes to get lucky. Preparation tries to remove luck entirely. Someone who studies routines, knows schedules, understands the area, and acts during a narrow, low-risk window is not behaving randomly. They are behaving strategically. That possibility is one reason this case continues to grip people so deeply. Many do not believe this was chaos. They believe it was calculated. Now think about the neighborhood factor. Followers of the case often mention familiarity. Someone knew where to go. Someone knew how to arrive without drawing attention. Someone knew when activity would be lowest. Someone may have known which route in and out created the least risk. That does not automatically mean an insider. But it often points toward knowledge. And knowledge narrows the universe of possibilities, because strangers guess. Familiar people know. This is why investigators in cases like this frequently examine circles of access before circles of distance. Who knew routines? Who knew schedules? Who knew vulnerabilities? Who knew enough to act confidently? Who had reason to watch quietly before acting? Those answers matter more than dramatic theories. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest misconceptions in true crime. People often assume that if authorities have digital evidence, an arrest should happen immediately. Real investigations rarely work that way. One timestamp alone may not be enough. One ping alone may not be enough. One suspicious gap alone may not be enough. But layer enough pieces together and a mosaic appears. For example, a device stops responding. A vehicle moves unexpectedly. A phone changes location. A search history shifts. A statement conflicts with logs. A financial account activates. A known associate cannot explain timing. Any single item might be argued away. Together, they become pressure. That is why time can actually strengthen a case. Every week gives investigators chances to compare records, challenge statements, revisit timelines, and test whether stories remain consistent. People forget what they said. Data usually does not. And that may explain why silence from authorities does not necessarily mean weakness. Sometimes it means patience. Sometimes it means they are waiting until every digital piece aligns so completely that once action begins, it does not
Let's talk about
stop.
what we know
Now
about
consider another
Thomaso
uncomfortable
Keone,
truth.
and why his name
Many
is being
people who
discussed
think they
publicly in
removed
connection with the
evidence
disappearance of
only
Nancy
removed
Guthrie. It's
visible
important to be
evidence.
very clear
They
about where
clean
this attention is
surfaces.
coming from and
They
what is
discard
and is not
objects.
confirmed.
They change
Now, at this
phones.
point, law
They
enforcement has
delete
not named any
messages.
suspects or
They
persons of
reset
interest. The
devices.
reason
But
that his
hidden
name is
layers
circulating is
often
actually
remain.
tied directly to
Cloud
statements that were
backups,
made by journalist
carrier
Ashley
records,
Banfield, not to
location
any official
cache,
police confirmation.
metadata,
Okay? On a recent
vehicle
episode of her podcast,
telematics,
Drop Dead Serious,
third-party
Ashley
app
Banfield
logs,
said she
router
has a law
histories,
enforcement source that
account
she
recovery
described
events,
as impeccable,
linked
who shared
devices.
details about the
This is why
investigation that has not
investigators
been
often
confirmed by
say the
authorities.
modern world
Now, according
remembers
to
more than
Banfield,
people
that source
realize.
told her
And if someone
Nancy
believed they
Guthrie's son-in-law,
outsmarted the
Thomaso
system,
Keone,
they may have
be
only
a
delayed the
potential
system.
suspect. Annie
That idea
Guthrie, who
matters
is
here
Thomaso's
because
wife
some
and Nancy's
followers of the
daughter, Annie
case
Guthrie's
believe the public
vehicle
is
was
watching an
allegedly
old-style
towed and
mystery
impounded.
in a new-style
Multiple
world.
security cameras at
No
Nancy
witnesses?
Guthrie's home were allegedly
Still
smashed,
solvable.
suggesting that
No
someone may have
confession?
known where they
Still
were located.
solvable.
Ashley emphasized
No
that those
obvious
claims came
suspect
directly
publicly
from her
named?
source,
Still
and that the
solvable.
phrase prime
Why?
suspect
Because
was the
invisible
exact
evidence
wording
can
used
become
to her.
visible
Again,
later.
according to the source,
That is what
not
many
official
major
police
cases have taught.
statements.
Years-old
Hours
phones
after Ashley's
reopened.
episode aired,
Old accounts traced. DNA reprocessed. Historic movement data recovered. Forgotten purchases rediscovered. Small anomalies reinterpreted under a new theory. And suddenly, what looked cold becomes clear. So what could the 41-minute window represent? Possibly transition, possibly interruption, possibly movement, possibly concealment, possibly the moment one plan succeeded or began failing. We do not know publicly, but investigators likely know far more than outside observers. And that may be why this case feels suspended rather than stalled. Suspended while pieces settle, suspended while records return, suspended while one final confirmation arrives. But there is another side to this story that may matter just as much as digital clues. Because even the best data can only tell part of the truth. Sometimes the most critical evidence is not in a device. It is in a room, on a handle, inside a drawer, on fabric, near an entry point. And if those first hours were mishandled, the damage may have happened before anyone realized how important the house itself would become. Because what happened inside that home may still be speaking too. By the time most people hear about a missing person case, the most important minutes may already be gone. That is one of the hardest truths in criminal investigations. The public often sees the press conference, the search teams, the interviews, the roadblocks, the headlines. But investigators know something different. The first hour can matter more than the next week. Because in the beginning, evidence is fresh. Footprints are undisturbed. Surfaces are untouched. Devices remain where they were left. Odors are stronger. Timelines are tighter. Memories are clearer. Scenes still tell their story. Then time begins to erase things. Doors open and close. People walk through rooms. Objects are moved. Phones are charged. Laundry is touched. Trash is taken out. Windows are opened. Questions are asked before statements are recorded. The natural reactions of worried loved ones can unintentionally change the very environment investigators later need to study. That is why trained responders treat uncertain disappearances so carefully. Not because they assume guilt, because they respect possibility. And possibility lives in details. This is exactly why so many people continue asking difficult questions about the Guthrie home. Was the location secured quickly enough? Was movement through the home limited early enough? Were key areas preserved immediately? Were all items documented before handling? Those are not accusations. They are the kinds of questions raised in almost every serious disappearance when answers take time. Because homes are unlike outdoor scenes. A home is intimate. Thousands of touch points. Thousands of normal traces. Fingerprints from family. DNA from routine life. Shared spaces. Mixed fibers. Regular traffic. That means investigators are not simply looking for evidence. They are looking for evidence that does not belong. And that becomes much harder once a scene changes after the event. Consider something as simple as a drawer handle. If untouched, it may preserve timing clues, unusual residue, partial prints, foreign skin cells, or transfer patterns. If 10 people touch it afterward, that signal gets buried. Now multiply that across an entire house. Bedroom doors, bathroom fixtures, kitchen counters, closets, nightstands, light switches, vehicle keys, bones, medication containers. Everyday objects become forensic puzzles. That is why experienced investigators often say scenes do not just contain evidence, they contain order. And when order changes too quickly, interpretation becomes harder. This may be one reason public frustration remains strong. Many followers of the case believe the house itself may have held answers in those first critical hours. Not dramatic answers. Tiny answers. A misplaced item. An opened cabinet. A disturbed rug. Transfer fibers. Marks near an exit. A missing object nobody noticed immediately. Sometimes cases turn not on what was found, but what should have been there and was not. Now add another layer. If someone familiar with the home was involved, or someone who had studied it beforehand, they may have known exactly where not to touch, where cameras were, where noise carried, which route was fastest, and which areas would blend into ordinary household life. That matters because staged normalcy can be powerful. A room can look calm and still hide disturbance. A hallway can look untouched and still tell a story under proper examination. A clean surface can still preserve microscopic traces. This is why many viewers believe the home may remain central to the case even now, because scenes do not stop mattering once investigators leave. They continue mattering when lab results return, when timelines are refined, when new names emerge, when statements change, when one tiny inconsistency suddenly points back to a room everyone thought was understood. Now let's address the question many people ask most directly. If authorities know so much, why no arrest yet? It sounds simple, but arrests are not the same as answers. An arrest made too early can damage a case permanently. If prosecutors believe a suspect can challenge the timeline, explain away evidence, or create reasonable doubt, they may advise patience. That patience can be maddening to the public, but to investigators, patience can be strategy. Imagine having strong suspicion but needing one more pillar. A clearer financial link. A stronger forensic match. A contradiction under oath. A cooperating witness. A recovered device. A traceable payment path. A digital login tied to location. A final DNA comparison. Without that last pillar, the structure may wobble. With it, the structure can hold. This brings us to the financial angle that has captured so much attention. Whenever ransom language, payment demands, or cryptocurrency rumors enter a case, people often imagine instant tracing or instant disappearance. Reality is slower. Some digital transactions are visible, but identifying the human behind them can take time. Wallets can connect to other wallets. Funds can move through layers. Accounts may require subpoenas. Exchanges may sit in different jurisdictions. Names may emerge only after patient analysis. That means what appears silent publicly may be active privately. Records requested. Movements mapped. Known contacts compared. Devices linked. Behavioral patterns analyzed. If any financial component exists in this case, investigators may be trying to prove not just that money moved, but who controlled the movement. That difference matters in court. Now consider another possibility. Authorities may already know their primary suspect, but need to disprove alternate explanations first. That is common in difficult cases. A person says they were elsewhere. Logs must confirm or deny it. A person claims routine behavior. Investigators compare previous patterns. A person explains contact innocently. Metadata tests timing. A person appears cooperative. Statements are checked against devices. Every layer takes time, and the more serious the charge, the more complete the case must be. This is why long silences can sometimes precede sudden action. Nothing appears to happen, then everything happens at once. Search warrants, arrests, new filings, evidence summaries. Because the public only sees the final chapter of months of invisible work, still, none of this changes the human cost. Nancy Guthrie is not a puzzle piece, not a topic, not a headline cycle. She is a person whose absence reshaped lives. Families do not experience investigations as timelines. They experience them as empty chairs, interrupted routines, birthdays without celebration, unanswered calls that never come, and mornings that begin with the same wound. That reality should remain at the center of every discussion. Not spectacle, not entertainment, justice. And justice often moves slower than grief. So where does that leave day 78? It leaves us with three powerful possibilities. First, investigators are closer than the public realizes. Second, critical early evidence created lasting complications. Third, the final answer may come from combining physical evidence, digital records, and human behavior, not from any single dramatic clue. That combination is how many modern cases are solved. Not one smoking gun, 100 small truths aligned, a timestamp here, a fiber there, a false statement, a route choice, a transaction, a device log, a motive no longer hidden. And once aligned, the picture can become undeniable. For now, the public sees silence. But silence can be deceptive. It can mean delay. It can mean caution. It can mean careful preparation. Or it can mean that somewhere, on a desk or a screen, investigators are looking at one final detail that changes everything. If that day comes, these 78 days will be remembered very differently. Not as endless waiting, but as the period before the truth surfaced. Until then, the questions remain. What mattered most, the house, the timeline, or the digital trail? What was missed? What was preserved? And who believed they had more time than they really did? Do you believe the digital heartbeat is what the FBI is waiting on? Or has the physical evidence in the home already told the story? Tell me what you think below. Because in cases like this, public memory matters too.